I moved to Antelope because it was a green oasis surrounded by high desert country in north central Oregon. It was absolutely crime-free, beautiful, wonderful neighbors, and all hell broke loose when these people moved in.
All they cared about was being with the master.
There's no ism here. There's no belief system. That's the excitement of this New Age city. In fact, what we plan to create here is an oasis where beings from all over the planet who love to study the occult and mysticism can come and celebrate and dance in whatever they feel like.
In August of that year, they bought their first property in the city of Antelope. Within a year and a half after their arrival, the Rajneesh not only had their own city of Rajneeshpuram, but they completely controlled the city of Antelope.
Describe what he is. I just love him so much. I can see through him existence in a different way that I didn't understand it before. Just incredible beauty. I just feel it when he's around, and I just want to be near him. I'd do anything that he asked me to.
Jabbed his doctor in the butt with a poison needle.
That's very nice. Did she do a good job?
The doctor apparently is still alive.
Then obviously she didn't do a good job. And I guarantee if she was my assistant, she would have done a good job.
Oregon's relationship with the Rajneeshis has gone from curiosity about a unique commune to fear of takeovers of the local government and accusations of attempted murder.
And the Pemberton folk point to things like this. Those therapy sessions are a bit way out for them.
You really think you need those guns and those revolvers?
You're absolutely correct. We do need it, we will have it, and we are all trained for it.
If someone tried to attack him here, would those men use those guns?
Absolutely.
Hello everybody. I'm doing another cult video. I know. What else is new? Hello everyone. My name is Haley Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos regarding conspiracy theories, controversial people, true crime, and all things spooky, scary, skeletons. So if you're into any of that, you can subscribe, and if not, totally chill. Let's just sit back, have a little moment together. This is gonna be fun. Today we are going to be talking about the Rajneeshpuram community. Without further ado, let's just hop right into it. There's a lot here, so brace yourself. Leader of this cult, named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, was born on December 11th, 1931, making him a Sagittarius. I don't even know how to pronounce it, and I'm not even gonna attempt. I'm gonna put it on the screen. British India. He is actually the oldest of 11 children. He actually lived with his grandparents until he was about 8 years old, and then his grandfather passed away. And it wasn't until he hit high school where he started to notice that he had gifts. Felt like he was kind of above everyone else, but not in a cocky way. He just felt like he was meant to do more than his classmates. And he started in high school getting into breath work, yoga, meditation, and hypnosis. 1951, when he was 19 years old, he went on to go to college and major in philosophy. 2 years later, in 1953, that is when Bhagwan says that he had his spiritual awakening. He said that one day he was just sitting underneath a tree and he just felt a rush go through him, and he felt like he was the chosen one and he must give the world his gifts. In 1955, he graduated college and went to pursue onto his master's, and while he was doing his master's, he was actually a philosophy teacher at a college. That college complained a lot about Bhagwan because they said that he wasn't even really teaching philosophy. The ideals and stuff that he would teach in his cult later on in life, he was teaching his group of students. So it was kind of like he wasn't even really teaching them philosophy, he was just kind of teaching his philosophy. In 1960, that is when he completed his master's, and the college that he was working at asked him to leave or transfer to a different college because his teachings were just getting a little bit too intense. He graduated with his master's and he went to go on and be a professor at another college. And in this class, as I said, he wouldn't even really teach philosophy. He was basically just teaching his own opinions. He would criticize Indian religion. He would talk about capitalism, science, modern technology, and birth control, but all in his own opinions. And he basically taught his group of students that these should be your opinions as well. Kind of got to a point where Bhagwan, as I said, like, he was basically just telling people his opinions of enlightenment and culture. And there were a lot of people that really thought that he was like the most intelligent man in the world. He started to become a public speaker, started to do his own little speeches that people would actually pay to come and watch and listen. And then this is also where Bhagwan then started to get his huge following of people through his college students. You know, when you're in college, you're most of the time very lost and in need of guidance, and then when this person comes along and basically tells you all of the things that you want to hear, you're going to want to hear more or support this guy as much as you can. Oh my god, I didn't even realize I didn't put on my light. Does that look better? 1962, he was still working at the college, but he was like, honestly, if I could make a bag doing this, I'd much rather make a bag doing this rather than like working for the man at this college. But I'm gonna still work for him though. Ended up like basically doing his own thing, but still being employed at the college, because again, the longer he was at the college, the more followers he would get. You know, I heard from a friend of a friend that Bhagwan is starting a cult and I kind of want to join. He even started his own 3 to 10 day meditation program. It was this meditation called dynamic meditation, and I'll get into what that is in a minute. 1966, the college found out of everything that he was doing and thought that, you know, since he was of course supporting capitalism and talking down upon Indian culture and what they believed in, and wasn't even teaching philosophy at this point, like he was literally just preaching his own beliefs onto other people and telling them that is the way that they should believe. College obviously didn't support this, and so they asked him to resign in 1966, and he did. Now, when he did resign, he was actually only 35 years old. In 1968, he then, you know, started to do his 3 to 10 day meditation programs. He was basically just doing it out of his apartment. He didn't really have like a big place to put all of his followers. People would just kind of set appointments with him. His following just started to get bigger and bigger. 1968 is actually where he met 16-year-old Sheila for the very first time. Now, Sheila plays a huge role in Bhagwan's life, his like go-to person, his spokesperson. Sheila had said that one day her parents said that they were going to go see Bhagwan, and so at the time she didn't really know who Bhagwan was. She just heard about him from talking of other people, but she had never really like had an interest or even met him before. She said that as soon as she met Bhagwan, she just started to cry, and she had no idea why. She just dropped to the floor and started crying, and then immediately when she started crying, Bhagwan opened up his arms and just hugged her. And so it was in this moment that Sheila realized that Bhagwan was going to be a huge figure in her life. The whole reason why the family went to go see Bhagwan in the first place is due to his very famous dynamic meditation. Now, this is where I'm going to talk to you about what dynamic meditation was. Dynamic meditation comes into 4 phases. Phase 1, you blindfold yourself and you do chaotic breathing, vigorous breathing in and out through the nose, and you do that for like maybe 2 minutes. You're also blindfolded because a lot of people felt like very awkward or self-conscious if they knew that other people were looking at them, or if they had to look at other people. Phase 2, release. People will like scream, punch, throw, like flop on the floor, like whatever was inside of them and they wanted to release, they would just basically go crazy and do whatever they wanted. You'll find out later, probably not the best of things to do. Phase 3, you would put your hands above your head and jump, and every time your feet hit the ground, you would say, what was it? Hoo. Just jumping on the ground, say hoo, hoo, hoo. And then phase 4 was complete silence. Just sit there in silence. Some people would cry, some people would laugh. And then the aftermath is that y'all would just have a big dance party. And we would dance to disco, because this was in the 70s. 1970, that is when Bhagwan realized that he just had way too many followers and nowhere to put them. He was getting way too many appointments where it kind of became overwhelming for him. Bhagwan thought, wouldn't it be easier if I just did all of the practices that I do, but with a group of people instead of doing it individual in my home? And that is when he bought this big place in India and made that his commune would go and they would all do the dynamic meditation together, only eligible to wear the colors oranges and reds and pinks. In order to get into this cult, you would have to change your name from your regular name to your spiritual name. This place was located in Mumbai, I believe it's pronounced. During this time, a lot of Bhagwan's followers was mostly Westerners, so it kind of became like a really big tourist attraction for the longest time, just people wanting to meet Bhagwan and wanting to know what he was like. Eventually, a lot of the people that did show up ended up staying there and living there full time because they did have eligibility for you to live there full time if you wanted. A lot of like doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers, they would all quit their job, and some of them even leave their family to dedicate themselves to Bhagwan. In the beginning, Bhagwan's idea was that he wanted to live in a world where everybody loved everyone. There was no such thing as like a gender or a pronoun. Everybody helped everyone. There was no such thing as currency. You wanted to like buy a shirt, that person would make a shirt for you because they love to make shirts, not because they want money for it. Money didn't exist in this town. He was just trying to create a very free community, and this was also, as I said, in the 70s and 80s, free, wild child, flower child aesthetic. Basically, what that stemmed from is that in the 50s, it was a very big thing to just like, oh, if you're a woman, then you have to stay at home, you have to take care of the kids, and then the man goes out and works all day, and then you live in this house, and you have to be dressed nice, and you have to have like perfect hair and perfect makeup and a perfect family, be the perfect household, picture perfect family. But in the 70s, they were kind of rebelling against that. They didn't want that. They wanted openness. They didn't want the traditional cookie cutter family. They wanted to go out there and be themselves and love whoever they wanted and be free. And that's kind of what catalysted the flower child movement, to just do whatever you want and love whoever you want. And that was, you know, what Bhagwan stood for in the beginning. Also, like requesting people to call him Shri Bhagwan. I don't speak the language that they speak in India, but apparently from like what I was reading is that Shri means sir and Bhagwan means blessed one. So people referred to him as Shri Bhagwan, which means sir blessed one. Bhagwan was really on a roll. He started making books, he started getting followers, and he also still had like his presentations, and he would fill about 20 to 30,000 person stadiums. Just his philosophy on things people really looked up to a lot. Create a world where children were not raised by just a two set of people, but instead raised by a community. Everybody would get a hand in like raising the children. I don't really believe in. I feel like children need individual attention from like specific people. I don't think a group dynamic could have the same love and affection as a specific person, like your parent. 1979, 9 years after starting a lot more followers, and so that is when they decided to create their own little town by first making their own bank. Made their own bank because when people came to his teachings and stuff like that, they had to pay money. Also, if they wanted anything in the gift shop, they had to pay money. Basically, what a typical day here looked like is that at 6 a.m. they would start with dynamic meditation. 8 a.m. Bhagwan would do a lecture. The day was filled with therapies, meditation, and work, and like spending time with others. In the evening, Bhagwan will greet all of the newcomers and offer therapy to anyone who needed it. All of the new followers that he had got that day, he would take time every single night to meet every one of those followers and like learn their names and then offer therapy if they needed any, like life advice. It was just a community of being yourself and understanding that like no matter what color, race, gender, you are all loved and you are all one. And that was like amazing message. You will then see that this world is quite impossible because you will see later on. Going back to what I said earlier about these therapies, not like scandal, but just like people not seeing the following as they were before. They were like, okay, well now it's a little weird. Basically, I'll insert a clip if I dare. I'll insert a slight clip. I won't actually show you anything because there's a Netflix documentary about this called Wild Wild County. It shows a lot. It shows like nudity and stuff I can't really show on YouTube or else I'll get demonetized. So if you do want to go watch it, it's the Netflix documentary Wild Wild County, episode 2 at 32:47. That is where you'll find actual footage of the therapies, but I'll lightly explain it for you. In these therapies, you would just release everything that was holding inside of you. But the thing of it is that you were releasing your rage onto other people. So people were getting hurt, people were breaking their bones, people were screaming. Like, it literally looked so scary just watching it. Like, it did not look good at all. A lot of girls ended up getting raped in like these therapies because people just released their aggression and didn't really like control themselves or anything. They just let go, and like by doing so they ended up kind of pushing that physical aggression onto the women in the room. His followers were called sannyasins, and there was around 1,500 sannyasins living at this place. Since their following just got bigger and bigger, it was very hard to like find a place to keep all of these people. As I said, people would literally leave their entire lives behind to live here. They needed a bigger space. There was this woman named Lakshmi, and she was the secretary. Bhagwan told her one day, like, go out and try to find a place that we can go to put all of our followers. And she's like, gotcha, boss. And so she goes all over the place. Delhi, Kutch, Bombay. The problem is that while she was trying to look for places, it was also around the time where Miss Gandhi was kind of, you know, popping off. Every time tried to find locations or even like recruit people into their cult, she was more seen as a threat to that community because everyone believed in Gandhi. People just saw Bhagwan as like a wannabe Gandhi, and so that was kind of a threat. Lakshmi couldn't find anywhere. Nobody wanted to sell her anything because of like this being a threat to Gandhi. Sheila, remember Sheila, how I said she'd be a very big character in this story. Sheila actually used to live in New Jersey while she was going to school. So she went to Bhagwan one day and was like, hey, in America, they have freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. They are really all about what Bhagwan stood for, like loving everyone and having the freedom to do whatever you want and say whatever you want. Sheila was like, maybe I can cook something up in America for you and try to get somewhere that we can go. Bhagwan decided to fire Lakshmi and make Sheila his new secretary. While Sheila was trying to find a place, Bhagwan just randomly took a vow of silence. The whole point of like Bhagwan, you would go to hear like the lectures and what he thought about philosophy and stuff like that. With this vow of silence, people just had to think for themselves. Everything that they've been taught through Bhagwan. So the fact that Bhagwan wasn't offering them guidance anymore, it was kind of like a culture shock to a lot of people. Sheila was in America for a while trying to find places that they could put everyone. She eventually found this very, very small town in Oregon called City of Antelope that was population 40, but it was also a big farming land. They actually had 100,000 square foot of land that Sheila wanted to buy. But the thing that kind of screwed them over later on, when she was getting the permits to buy this place, the only reason the mayor of Antelope even allowed it is because she told them that they were going to use the land specifically for farming. She did not tell them that they were going to like bring thousands and thousands of people were going to be there. She basically just said that it was going to be used for farming and that was it. That is how she was able to get the permit and get the land. Once word got around that she finally found a place, that is when she went back to India and she decided to bring all of the followers. But since she was kind of lying to everyone, they needed to be super, super quiet about it. They were just bringing like chunks of people to Oregon, all the newcomers as well. It even got harder because that means they had to bring more and more people each time. A lot of these people came from all around the world. They came from India, Germany, Iceland, Denmark, like all these places to go to this place and live there. But since you were coming into America and you didn't have a visa, that was very, very illegal. So it had to be as quiet as possible. Once they rounded up all their people there, that is when they got to building. At this point, after Bhagwan took his like vow of silence, a few days later, he literally just left. While Bhagwan was gone, that is when Sheila was kind of in control of everything, making sure that everybody went there and had a place to stay and had like food, clothes. So as I said, they told told them that they were just going to use the farm to land, they were going to use the land to farm, they did not. They ended up creating like their own actual city. A lot of these people were people from all over, doctors and nurses and lab technicians, and so they built their own like hospital basically. That was the thing about this as well, is that a lot of the people, they worked like 16-hour shifts, but they did it all with a smile on their face. It was a community that was based upon love and compassion. Nobody really had an urge to get a lot of money because they knew in this, you know, society, money didn't really mean anything. It's just you work hard because you love to, you know, give back to the community. All of the architects would help build the city. They had their own airport. They had pilots that would fly these planes. Teachers that worked in schools, their own bank. They had their own law firm. The lawyers and legal teams would work at there. It was so incredible. In their mind, they thought that they were going to be catalyst for a better society. They really thought that maybe if they go on this path and start doing all this stuff, then they will then start a chain reaction, so then everybody will join, and then we will soon live in a world of love and compassion. Also, along with this beautiful city that they have bought for themselves, built from the ground up, they would only eat the fruits and vegetables and stuff that they grew. Or on a completely raw vegan diet. 2 years into the making of this city, that is when Bhagwan finally came back and he was able to see all of the hard work that the town had done. Another thing about this is that Bhagwan was getting a lot of money, ended up having 90 Rolls Royces, had on all expensive jewelry, very pleased to see what his people had done for him. Although this sounds very open and like, oh, I actually want to live there, like they just seem so happy and like to be in a free community where you could be yourself and not really care about what people think and just love each other, like it sounds like a really good community. Trust me, you are not crazy by thinking that you want to move there, because I was watching the documentary and I was like, girl, looking up if like it's still around, I'm like, wait, hold on. The people of Antelope, remember the population 40 people? Yeah, they were not too happy with this. Literally just lied to them and told them that they were only going to do farmland, but then made airports and banks and also brought in like bus loads of people every week. People of Antelope thought that they were brainwashed and they didn't know what they were talking about, and they basically just destroyed their small quiet town. Literally the reason why they moved to the countryside was that they wanted a quiet getaway for like retirement. As I said, they were like raising children in this cult. They said that a few times when they looked over there, they actually saw, since it was such like a free community, they would literally be like having sex on the bridges and just like in public while kids were just running around. They're very young, very innocent. They don't need to see that. They don't even need to be exposed to that idea of doing that at such a young age. They even said that like it's not a city, you know, out there the most you hear is like a coyote. Other than that, it's literally just trees and the breeze, no sound at all. And so every time they would be doing their thing all night long, they would hear it as if they were in the next room. This was also around the time where Jonestown had just happened, so they were very scared that this was going to be another Jonestown situation. Also felt like the Bhagwan community would basically just treat everyone else, they were dumb. Like every time they would talk to the city of Antelope, they would always talk down to them, like they are such like a high above society and they just know so much more than the public does, and they like should be awarded for how great of a person they are. They felt like the people that were following Bhagwan basically just took a vow to give up their free will. This was actually like a huge deal, not even just the Antelope community, but the whole Wasco County as well as the state of Oregon. Everyone was talking about this cult. Everyone was so scared of this cult because they didn't know what was going to happen. A lot of people were really wondering like, what actually went on behind closed doors at this place, because the police had been called so many times to the ranch. They were just like waiting for something to happen, but every time they would visit, it wouldn't seem illegal. Like they weren't doing anything really illegal, because technically they were still farming on there, and there was no written document that Sheila had signed that said, yes, the only thing I'm going to do on this land is farm, until one guy, he is a filmmaker. He decided to somehow sneak himself into this community, become a member. He went in there and he secretly recorded one of their therapy meetings, and that was the therapy meeting that I told you about before in the Netflix documentary, and like people screaming, punching each other, going absolutely ballistic in this room. He even said that one of his experiences was that locked in a room with these people for 8 hours, and everyone was armed with wooden weapons. These therapies were not something of just releasing physical aggression. It was like releasing physical aggression onto other people. Some people have physical aggression towards other people. So that was Bhagwan's mentality of like, okay, if these people have aggression towards other people, let them just take their aggression out on other people. These people will be fine. Not even really understanding that these people could have traumatic experiences, such as I said, like with the cases. After this documentary came out, everybody was watching this documentary. It went out on the box offices and everyone was getting tickets to see it. Wait. Oh no. Oh no. Why am I saying oh no? Oh wait, that's why I'm saying oh no, because I think it's, no, it's not. That was a little scary. Basically I went to go like crisscross my legs, and then it hit the cord of the ring light, and then the ring light fell. Back to the story. This documentary also featured the people of Antelope and what they had to say about it. The city of Antelope was actually really mad at the Rajneeshis, not just because of what they had done and lied to them, basically. Said that they would only do farmland, but now they're creating hotels and airports and hospitals. They quite literally Christopher Columbus'd that town, and like I'd be mad too. They said that they were also like ruining the town's history. The main guy of this town, like the main spokesperson, said that his great-grandfather was in the war and they hid here in this town, and would also bring a lot of his other friends and children that were involved in the war in the middle of nowhere as a safe spot. And so this town, over generations and generations, close-knit town, a community of people that really honored World War veterans that would come here, place to survive basically. And there was a lot of history, like there's a lot more history than just that goes on in this town. I mean, I'd be mad too if like my great-grandfather literally made this land from the ground up for me and like all of my other friends, and then all of a sudden this town just like quite literally Christopher Columbus is us and says, yeah, no, this is our town now. These people also tried really hard to get the city of Antelope to move out of Antelope so that they could like have more room to do whatever they wanted. They would walk around the city of Antelope at night and like flash flashlights into their rooms. Every time anyone would come out of their house, they would just be standing there with a camera and filming them. They would just be filming them constantly. They were basically trying to push people to move out, and a lot of people ended up moving out, but then there was a very small group of people that were standing their ground and saying, no, this is my town. Like there is no way that you are kicking me out of my town when my grandfather literally built this town for me. So Bhagwan's community was like, if you're not gonna move out, then we're gonna make you move out. We're holding an election for new mayor of Antelope. And so then they were like, oh my god, because technically, you know, this Rajneesh community, their land is in Antelope, so they technically live in Antelope, and the elections were coming up for like new mayor. But before, with a population 40, it was like very mutually agreed upon who was going to be the mayor of that town. But now with the Rajneeshis there, obviously they were going to win if there was an election. They did the election, the old mayor ran, and then Bhagwan ran, even though Bhagwan was in his vow of silence. So like what? Bhagwan ended up, surprise surprise, winning the election, and he then became the mayor of Antelope. He didn't kick out anyone, but they did started making like it mandatory that you wear only orange, pink, and red, change the Antelope Cafe into like a new cafe, changing the street names, they changed the city name. In 1983, they wanted, as I said earlier, to expand their beliefs. They wanted to like recruit new members, and they decided to buy out a building in the middle of downtown Portland and make that a Rajneesh like hotel. Well, shortly after it was built and completed, it was actually bombed with a bunch of the people still in there. Sheila, as I said, the secretary, the ringleader of this whole operation, while Bhagwan is in his vow of silence, was like, oh no, 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 no. This is a threat. I need to protect my people. So let's wrangle up all of the Rajneeshis that are trained veterans and know how to shoot a gun. They have their FOID card. They're gonna buy a bunch of guns for us, and we're gonna teach our people how to shoot guns. And so that's exactly what happened. World War veterans, all of the people in there that had their FOID cards. Actually, let me tell you how many guns these people had. They ended up buying 97 AK-47s, 20 semi-automatic rifles, 70,000 rounds of ammo, and 1 million AK-47 rounds of ammo. 1 million rounds of AK-47 ammo. And people were very scared because also the Bhagwan community had its own police force as well. And since they had their own police force, they were eligible to get all of the like top classified police force information as like a regular police officer would, as well as get access to a lot of guns. Went out, they bought a bunch of guns, and then they decided to teach a bunch of people how to shoot guns. 1983, they had about 500,000 members globally. It was said around a couple thousand people lived there. This town would hold like festivals. This festival was basically for anybody who wanted to like meet Bhagwan or just like see the community. 1,000 people would come to this event and come to this town just to listen to Bhagwan speak. Bhagwan wasn't even speaking. Like literally Bhagwan would just stand out there and the crowd would go wild. Like he wouldn't say a word. People were coming to these festivals. People were not only paying for tickets, but they were also paying like for the gift shops and the books, donations, and they ended up getting from like these festivals that they would hold quite often, as well as like all the money from the people, because a big part of getting in this community is that you have to give all of your wealth to the community, giving back to the community in a way. All of that combined, they ended up making $65 million in 2 years, which is now equivalent to $173 million. $173 million in 2 years, just off of like what they were doing. And so what? More people that got there, the louder it got, and the louder it got, the more angrier the city of Antelope got. One day, a guy from the city of Antelope was just, you know, out riding his horse, doing his thing, and his trash is right next to the Rajneeshis' trash. He starts looking through the Rajneeshis' trash. From the prior festival, there was like a little poster in the trash, and the guy thought like, oh, well, that'd be kind of cool to have, just like a little poster of him. He goes to pick up the poster, but underneath the poster is a bunch of transcripts from meetings, but there were notes on these papers that said shred after the meeting, shred this, shred that. It was believed that maybe people just didn't want to shred them, or they were just shredding so much paper that they just got lazy and didn't want to do it anymore. He ended up finding the actual documents, and since this was in their trash, it was technically like public property. So he took up as many papers as he can, and he started to read them. And a lot of these papers had to do with, talked about illegal immigration, how Bhagwan didn't really have a real visa to live here, smuggling from the country, tax fraud as well, because $86 million in 1 year is not going to fund airport and a hotel and a hospital and a bank, law firm. Like, where are they getting this money from? Like, besides festivals, they also have to pay for like food that they supply there. They have to pay for the clothes, materials that they use, have to pay for the school. Just all the little things mixed in with the big things, it just didn't make sense. Then this was also around the time where the elections for mayor of Wasco County was about to begin. The whole entire county, now obviously Bhagwan was like, let me jump all up in that. And so then he started running for the mayor. This was a huge deal because it's not as little as like, oh, we run this town, 40 population town. This was the entire county. After the county, it's the state, you know, like this was a huge deal. Basically, the Rajneeshis would travel to different states such as like Chicago, Texas, New Jersey, and recruit homeless people by saying to homeless people, hey, if you get on this bus, we can take you to Neverland. We can take you to a place. You'll have a bed. You'll have a community. Everybody will love you, appreciate you. It's not like a homeless shelter, and it's way better than jail. And obviously all these homeless people were like, yeah, take me there. More people into this community, meaning more people will vote in the election for Bhagwan. As I said, a lot of these people were immigrants and could not legally vote in America. So that was another reason why they needed to get a bunch of homeless people, because most of these homeless people were American born, meaning they were eligible to become registered voters and vote for Bhagwan. 1984, that is when the whole elections started to begin. I'm so tired. Like, I could literally fall asleep right now. It's because I'm sick. Oh, if I could fall asleep right now, I literally would. I could fall asleep like this. I'm not gonna fall asleep. I think it's because I'm sick. And since I'm sick, I didn't drink coffee. Hey, so I'm editing and I realized literally the reason why I was so tired was because I took NyQuil before filming this. Supposed to take NyQuil like every 4 hours, I think, and then you get better. Yeah, I took NyQuil before filming this, and I didn't even realize until after the fact because I took a nap and I was like, why was I so tired? And I was like, oh, because I took NyQuil before filming this. Following on, if you see me a little goofy, it's because I'm on NyQuil and I should be sleeping, but I wasn't. So that's fine. But the Rajneeshis were not slick. People started to catch on. Obviously, like, these people do not actually care about veterans. They don't actually care about the Constitution. They just want to win the election and that's it. They don't actually care about all of the homeless people that they bring in. They just want to look like good people and have a bunch of good people on their side. A lot of the homeless people that were interviewed, they said that this was the first time they actually felt that they were part of a family or like a really close community. They're not going to leave. Now, Wasco County actually had a very slim difference in numbers between the Rajneesh community and the Wasco County just by sheer numbers. And the only way that they would be able to win is if 100% of Wasco County then voted for not Bhagwan, but like their mayor. If not everybody dedicated themselves, the whole county was going to go to Bhagwan. And this was very scary to a lot of people because a lot of people didn't want to pray to Bhagwan. They wanted to pray to God. Not even just like God, but people who believed in Buddha. They didn't want to pray to Bhagwan. They wanted to pray to Buddha. They wanted to have their freedom of religion, and they didn't think they were going to get that if Bhagwan was the leader. 42 days until election day, that is when they sent a bunch of the homeless people that they had just brought in to go to the city hall and become registered voters. When this busload of homeless people actually went, they were turned down and rejected due to speculation of organized efforts to register people of the Wasco County. It was called a blanket rejection. So basically, on suspicion that they were going to like mess with the votes or something, she was rejecting all new voters in all of Wasco County. Now, this was not just a problem for the Rajneeshis, but this was also a problem for Wasco County because, as I said, what if there was a bunch of people in Wasco County that was not registered and now they really can't register? So it's looking bad for both sides at this point. When the homeless people came back after being rejected, one of the homeless men got so angry with the fact that he could not vote that he started screaming, throwing things around. Sheila came out of her house and she was like, okay, what's going on? And the guy turned to Sheila, held her up by her throat, and started choking her. In that moment, the police force that the Rajneeshis had did not do a single thing. They were way too scared to go up and protect her, and they didn't do anything but just stand there in shock. It wasn't actually until doctors stepped in and had to sedate the man in order to get him off of Sheila But in that moment, this is when Sheila realized that, oh my God, we're screwed, because I was literally just being choked and attacked and my police force didn't do anything, meaning that we just gave guns to people that are going to use them irrationally. Sheila started at this point kind of having her own realizations. Oh my God, what has this town come to? What am I doing here? This is so messed up. Like, I shouldn't be involved in this. That's when they decided that the homeless people or street people were going to be a danger to all of the society. So in order to continue a nice flow, they were going to sedate all of the homeless people. And so that night, when they were all having dinner, they decided to lace the beer that they were giving to the homeless people, basically sedate them and drug them without their knowledge. Now, the press always has something bad to say, and so then it wasn't until a while afterwards the press actually visited the grounds of the Rajneesh community and actually found a military tank and was like, hey yo, what is this? Sheila was like, oh girl, that's for protection. And they were like, no, that's not protection, girl. That's like literally a crime. And I also forgot to mention this, literally when the reporters were like, what is this? Sheila pretended like she didn't know.
An accident.
I don't know. I've just come here. What do you want me to do? I've just come. Let me see. Do you want to move? Let me see what it is.
Have you seen it?
I'm coming to
I'm
here.
just glad Max
Well, I hear that Mr. Dandaro says that this is what he gets for his courtesy. I don't understand it.
She was just like, what? A military tank? You're joking. She pretended like she had no clue, and then she's like, no, seriously, I've never seen this before. And then they start walking up, and then she's like, oh, this whole thing? Like, she really tried it, and it was so funny. And they were like, okay, because they're not the police, they're literally just reporters. Like, they can't really do anything about it. While these reporters were there looking at everything, they actually found 3 long buildings, like in the middle of nowhere. And they were asking people like, hey, is it okay if I go in those buildings? Like, I just want to look around, I just want to see what's going on. All of them were like, no, you can't go in there. And then when they actually walked up there, it had like a big padlock on it and was like, see, it's locked and we don't have a key. Like, sorry, you just can't come in here. That is when the reporters were like, okay, obviously something fishy is going on in those buildings. 28 days until election day. That is when the Dalles, a town in Wasco County, actually ended up all getting salmonella poisoning. It wasn't just like one restaurant that gave everyone salmonella. Over 700 people got violently ill from salmonella. One restaurant that like a small group of people went to got salmonella. It was all over the Dells. People were getting salmonella, and a lot of people thought that this was possibly an act constructed by the Rajneeshis, because they thought that if they got them sick enough, they wouldn't be able to show up to election day and vote. So the media did not blame this on the Rajneeshis. They basically said that like the way that the food was handled had a big thing to do with it. It was also around this time where the Rajneeshis started to get a few celebrities entering their community, and this group of celebrities was called the Hollywood people. As I said, since Bhagwan was taking his vow of silence, having access to Bhagwan was such a big deal. The only person that really saw Bhagwan on like a daily basis was Sheila. She was the only person that spoke to Bhagwan. She was the only person that saw Bhagwan. But as soon as these Hollywood people entered into the picture, that all kind of went out the window, and the Hollywood people was actually getting more attention to Bhagwan than Sheila was. The only reason they were getting like the utmost attention from Bhagwan, they were very wealthy. So they would gift Bhagwan like diamond watches and different jewelry. All of these things they would throw to Bhagwan, and of course Bhagwan loved shiny things and gifts, and so then he would then grant them his presents in return. Since a lot of people were getting access to Bhagwan, this actually sent Sheila, she started getting extremely jealous when she saw other people going into the quarters to meet Bhagwan. Bhagwan really liked them, was for their gifts, and like she also felt really bad about herself in that she couldn't afford those gifts for Bhagwan's attention. Sheila's house was called Jesus Grove, and basically the people that lived at Jesus Jesus Grove her team of people. And so one night she calls a meeting into Jesus Grove and she tells everyone that the Hollywood people have actually gotten Bhagwan onto drugs, because apparently that day, which this actually happened, Bhagwan was talking to Sheila about a doomsday situation. All of his sannyasins would be safe. They would create like underground bunkers for everyone. Whole world would die, and they would then start a society just for sannyasins, and they would have the whole entire world as their blank canvas. If she wasn't thinking it before, she was like, oh my god, no, this is insane. Because even earlier, as I said, when she was getting choked, she was like, what did I just get myself into? And then now she's like having to create atomic bombs. That night, Sheila had a meeting in Jesus Grove where she told everyone that Bhagwan was on drugs, and the drugs were being given to him by his pharmacist, and she explains the whole doomsday conversation that they had. Oh my god, I didn't even mention this, and this is like kind of important. Remember how I said that like Bhagwan basically left for a few years and then randomly came to Oregon? Well, apparently when he did come to Oregon, he was not granted a visa right away. There was this guy named Mr. Turner that basically was the say yes or say no guy in whether or not Bhagwan got to stay there. Sheila, trying to protect Bhagwan, she was like, oh my god, like he's gone crazy on all these drugs. Imagine him if he gets deported and he has no support or anything from anyone, like something bad may really happen to him. That is when she proposes the idea to start killing people. She doesn't say specifically what person they were going to kill, but she did bring about the idea. They are trained with guns, so if the worst did come to happen, like they would know what to do. Everybody was just kind of in shock. They were like, oh my god, Sheila, are you on drugs? And on top of that, Bhagwan, actually, Sheila was right. He was on drugs. Why was she right? Because Sheila had actually wiretapped his room so she could listen in on all of the conversations that him and the Hollywood group was having. And it wasn't until his frequent nightly trips with Sheila where he started to get a little bit more serious about this doomsday situation. Sheila tried to, you know, preach to him and say, hey, the entire time you've been preaching positivity and love, and like if you're doing drugs and there's illegal drugs in here, obviously that gives the police more reason to arrest you. At this point, I personally think that Bhagwan was just so far gone into his drugs and his mentality, and also taking a vow of silence is probably very lonely. A mixture of his environment and everything like that is why he kind of spiraled into the way that he did. When Sheila was trying to explain to him all of the risks that he's putting this community through, he just continuously told Sheila to stay out of it. Then Sheila was like, okay, there's something clearly going on here that I'm not invited to. So at the Rajneesh's community, they had a group of 20 lawyers. Immigration comes knocking on Bhagwan's door saying, hey, we're being informed that you're committing marriage fraud. They were like, what is that? Never heard of that phrase in my life. That's so crazy. And so they were like, no, we have some documents here saying that you're literally committing marriage fraud, which if you don't know what marriage fraud is, it's basically 90 Day Fiance in a nutshell. Okay, so my NyQuil self literally explained this so bad, so I'm gonna re-explain it for you right now. What they would do is that, say there's two people in the Rajneesh cult and they have their own separate partners, but one of them can't stay in the country because they're not legal. Because a lot of these people that were coming into this cult were coming from like Germany, India, Denmark, all over the world. So coming to America, they were not legal. How do they get legal? They marry an American citizen to get a green card. They would take one illegal person and one American citizen. They would put them together, try to create a fake online relationship together, showing that they completely loved each other. And they would do this over the course of a few months. And then they would go to court. They would take a test to ensure that these people actually love each other and to grant them that green card. They go there, they get married in court, but they wouldn't just do it at the Oregon court, because obviously if a bunch of Rajneeshis start getting married at the Oregon court, it's going to look a little suspicious. So they would fly from Oregon to California, Texas, New Jersey, Tennessee, North Carolina, and get married in all these different courts, so it was harder to detect a pattern. They would get married in court, and once they were married, they were granted the green card. They would go back to the camp and just go back to their original partners. Again, I was on NyQuil and I was tired and it took me way too long to explain, but that's what it is. So legally they were married, but socially they weren't, and that is considered marriage fraud. The whole reason Bhagwan got a visa is because he was considered a religious leader, but they also found out that he took a vow of silence, and it would make no sense if he was a religious leader, but he was not leading anything. Like, he wasn't even talking to anyone. And from your morals, like living free and just with each other, that's not really a religion, that's more of a philosophy. So technically, we're gonna take away your visa because you're not following any of the things that you said you were gonna follow. February of 1984, that is when they decided to go back and forth, the legal team of the Rajneeshis and then the legal team of Oregon. Eventually, the Rajneeshis won the case, and Bhagwan was then granted a religious leader visa. Even to this day, like, I don't know how he got that, but 20 lawyers on his side. It's surprising, but not that surprising. Shortly after they granted him the visa, they kind of realized, like, wait, why did we do that? So then there was this one guy named Mr. Turner who basically had the say in whether or not Bhagwan was going to stay or not. Sheila then has another meeting at Jesus Grove, you know, spilling the tea. She was like, oh my God, there's this guy, Mr. Turner, and he is the person that is debating on whether or not deporting Bhagwan or leaving him here. This is very awkward because without Bhagwan, what even is this place? She was like, okay, new plan. Literally looked around the room and was like, okay, who's our best shot? Shanti. And there was this girl named Shanti who like grew up in a big hunting family. So like she's been shooting guns since she was a little girl. Sheila was like, we need to set up a plan to assassinate Mr. Turner, because there is no way that, you know, if Mr. Turner is dead, who's gonna say that he stays in the country? Not even really thinking logically that, like, if Mr. Turner dies, then that means the case will probably go to someone else. Like, it wouldn't just disappear. She looks to Shanti and she's like, Shanti, you're a great shot. You've been shooting since you were a young girl. You're gonna kill him. And then that was it. Like, didn't even ask Shanti, didn't even give her a choice. Basically, the next morning, Shanti, she actually speaks in the Netflix documentary about this situation. And so she said the next morning she woke up, had to go to this apartment building in Portland. She walked into this apartment. It was just like a big empty room and the cupboards were filled with street clothes. And then the girl that let her into the apartment was like, okay, pick whatever clothes you want and let's do this. Changes her clothes out of her like monochrome red outfit and then into regular street clothes. And this lady get in a car and they meet up with this guy who has a bunch of guns. Now Shanti then chooses the gun that she wants to get. She chooses a handgun because it's easier to hide, and that is when they go into Mr. Turner's work parking lot and they say Mr. Turner will be very easy to assassinate here because this is always where he parks his car. That was it. Like, the two people, they went into the car and then sat back while Shanti had to stand in this parking garage and wait for Mr. Turner to come so then she could shoot him. And so she waited there for like 2 hours. Thank God he didn't show up to work that day. They went back to the ranch. They told Sheila like, hey, he didn't show up, and she's like, darn, you know, another one bites the dust. We'll get him next time. This is how dedicated they were to Bhagwan. Like, Bhagwan wasn't even speaking to them, you know, before he would like come out and introduce himself to the newcomers and offer therapy. He was not doing that anymore. He was literally just basking in his wealth, in his huge house on his throne. He offered them barely anything. They were still just so dedicated that they would even kill people for him to stay there. 15 days until the election. No new registered voters. A journalist was actually sent to India in order to investigate the reasoning why Bhagwan left in the first place. India, I believe, is one of the most biggest places in the world, so why would you need to come to Oregon for something like that? What he found, the real reason why Bhagwan left, because remember how Bhagwan like left randomly for 2 years while everybody was building the place in Oregon. It's because he had so many warrants for his arrest in India. He was running away from all of his crimes in India. So the journalist found out that he was running away from gold smuggling, tax fraud, and arson. Remember how the guy was snooping through the trash and then he found all of those documents on these papers? It included all of their bills for building their airports, their banks, their homes, their clothes. That is when the reality started to set in and people were like, hey, this doesn't really sound right. That is when kind of the fantasy turned into a reality. I liked the idea of everybody loving each other and then living on love and compassion and everybody being with each other. But now reality sets in and people are starting to realize that that fantasy is not a fantasy, because there's a lot of illegal activity going on in order to fuel this fantasy. And a lot of people started to leave, and the first person that left was Sheila. It wasn't until a incident had happened. She was trying to save Bhagwan. He said to his people that he was going to die on July 6th, and everybody was like, okay, July 6th, that's kind of specific. Sheila had that little wiretapping in his room. She heard him and his doctor having a conversation about how his doctor was going to inject some sort of like morphine substance into his body to make him pass away on July 6th. So people think like, oh my God, he said he was gonna die on July 6th and he died on July 6th. Like, that's so crazy. She tried to put a stop to it. She was like, okay, this pharmacist is not gonna kill him on July 6th, because now I'm starting to realize Bhagwan is just a normal person. So then, remember Shanti, the girl that was supposed to assassinate the Mr. Turner but never did? She was like, Shanti, you're gonna kill the doctor. And Shanti was like, girl, you're kidding. She went to the hospital that they had in the town, and picked up a very deadly substance and a syringe. What the plan was, during their meditation in the morning, you know how they're all blindfolded, she would take off her blindfold and locate the doctor and then stab him with the syringe in his side. And since everyone was blindfolded, nobody would see who it was, and since everybody was jumping around, nobody could even really hear. So that's exactly what she did. Next morning, she went to dynamic meditation. Everybody put on her blindfolds. She syringed him. He fell to the ground. When people took off their blindfolds, that they realized that like, oh my God, the doctor's on the ground. Well, the doctor actually ended up surviving this. And Shanti says in the Netflix documentary that all of her life, she really wanted to be a dancer, and then now she's like a hitman for a living. It was such a big moment for her, because she then realized that, wow, the whole reason I entered this community, it was to get away from my toxic marriage, but now a designated hitman against my will, and I don't know how to get out. It was very hard for Shanti to come with these terms, because she's been following these people for like 12 years, and so it's very hard to quit a mentality of 12 years. Sheila went up to Shanti and was like, Shanti, I just want to let you know that I'm leaving today. I'm leaving this place and I'm not coming back. And Shanti was like, well, if you're leaving, I'm leaving too. That also inspired a bunch of other people to leave as well. People were supposed to be very dedicated to Bhagwan, but since Bhagwan was never there, all of their loyalty kind of shifted over to Sheila. Sheila was the only person that was sticking up for them. She spoke to people every night. She was the only one at the time with access to Bhagwan. She was also the spokesman in the media. Every time the media wanted to do an interview or something like that, she was the spokesperson for this community. So every time someone was like saying something bad about the community, she would go to the media and like stick up for her people. Kind of a bad bitch. Like she really did her spin. So since a lot of other people left, it got to Bhagwan's attention that Sheila had left, and Bhagwan was like, I guess I'll speak, because there's no one there to speak for me anymore, so I guess I'll speak for myself. After 4 years of silence, Bhagwan comes out to the media and speaks for the very first time, and not only does he speak, he blames everything on Sheila.
Which is that on one hand you're a genius and a beautiful man, and on the other hand you really exploit people by using their human frailty and emotions.
She's drugged. She's on hard drugs.
This man is hilarious. Sheila was like calling him out, saying, you're a fake, you're a lie, and you need to confess. And he was like, she's on drugs. She's on hard drugs. This man is impossible. This is so much fun to watch, not to be in. That would be scary. Sheila is a fake, she is a lie, and she is the one who gave him drugs. She is the one suggested all the marriage fraud, and Sheila and her little group of people already left. Nobody knows where they're at. They are just gone. So he starts throwing all these out. He's like, yeah, it's Sheila, it's Sheila, it's Sheila. Everybody's looking around for Sheila, and then all of a sudden, Sheila pops up naked naked in a German magazine. It was insane. She just, everybody's looking for her, like, where is Sheila? And then all of a sudden she poses nude for a magazine. Like, that is so iconic. She's like, I'm right here, what about it? And you gotta like feel for her too, because she did tell people to kill people. It was just like, she was in such a state of mind. And she even says in the Netflix documentary that at this time her brain was just fog. Like, she felt like she was literally brain washed. Like, her brain was washed with soap and water of everything that she ever knew. And then because she has been with this guy since she was 16 years old and now she's 33. Once the magazine came out, they were finally able to locate Sheila and her group. While all these things were going around in Germany, people trying to locate Sheila because he was basically blaming everything on her. So she had alleged like marriage fraud charges, immigration charges. They searched the ranch and they found 10,000 tapes underneath Sheila's house from the wiretapping of the rooms. Throughout all of this, I think Bhagwan started to realize like, oh, just because they're looking for Sheila doesn't mean that like I'm still not in trouble. So then that's when he just randomly started to like free his people a little bit more. Yeah, guys, wear whatever you want. Call yourselves whatever you want. I could care less. And they're like, what? And he's like, yeah, just do whatever you want. And they're like, wait, but haven't you taught us for the past like 12 years that we had to wear these colors and say this name? He was like, ah, things change. Yeah, you didn't have to wear a certain color anymore. You didn't have to go by your alias name anymore because people were calling this place like a cult. So he was just like, oh, this is not a cult. I'm just gonna switch things up and hope that nobody noticed the last 12 years of when we were doing this specific thing. There was Bhagwan who was speaking to the media, but there was also this other guy named KD who was speaking to the media. Now KD was a very soft boy. He like got very overwhelmed quickly. He was just like kind of very timid, very anxious, asking him all these questions in the interrogation room. You know, we could actually arrest you because technically you're an accessory if you know anything that you're not telling to us. KD just kind of broke down and was like, okay, here you go, like here's all your evidence. He ended up serving a lesser sentence because he basically just ratted everyone out. He gave them all of the papers that they needed to know, immigration, about the wiretapping, about salmonella. They did that. What they did is that they created a substance in their hospital. They had some sort of mechanism up their sleeve and they would like go across the salad bar. It would sprinkle this like salmonella into all of the food. And they did that to multiple restaurants across the Dells. And so now they were searching even harder for Sheila, charged Sheila with attempted murder, immigration, fraud, and conspiracy to arson. Thank you for giving us all this information. Now we have enough information to not only arrest Sheila, but also arrest Bhagwan. This was not an easy thing to do, to just walk in there and arrest Bhagwan, because as I said, people had guns. 1 million rounds of AK-47s. Like, these people were ready to shoot if someone like dared touch Bhagwan. It was very down low. Nobody really knew that they were going to arrest Bhagwan. 2 days before his arrest, 2 jets randomly fly into the ranch, take 5 minutes, and then fly out. And I don't know, take a wild guess of who you think was on that plane. It was Bhagwan. Bhagwan was on that plane, flew off, and they were like, now this is awkward. Now this is very awkward because what are we gonna do now? But they got Sheila. Sheila was found in Germany. She was found in an apartment with all of her group. And so she was arrested and taken back to Portland, Oregon for sentencing. But they ended up doing like a little bit of digging with all of his stuff. And they ended up kind of speculating that he might be at the Charlotte airport in New Jersey. And they were correct.
In the space of a day, the guru's diamond watches have been replaced by steel manacles. His tailored robe switched for prison fatigues. When he took off from Rajneeshpuram Sunday afternoon, the Bhagwan said he had no idea where he was going, only that his friends were taking him away for a few days. His first trip out of Oregon since he arrived 4 years ago, and just a day before the federal government intended to unseal a grand jury indictment, charging him with breaking the immigration laws.
There was a bunch of sannyasins on the plane as well as the pilot, and Bhagwan was hiding behind a airport chair. He was arrested on a $500,000 bail. His 20 lawyers decided to come up with a deal in that if they paid the $500,000 bail, the only catcher is that he would have to leave the US immediately. Bhagwan got no jail time for the immigration fraud, for all of the rape charges like that was going on in those therapies, tax fraud. He owed so much money to the government. He basically just paid $500,000, which is like pocket change to him. As for Sheila, and she was sentenced 4.5 years in prison for first-degree assault, conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and illegal wiretapping. And then she also agreed to leave the US after release. Shanti, she ended up serving 10 years for attempted murder and attempted assassination of an authority. It was so crazy because even after how much Bhagwan had done to Sheila, a year into jail, the media actually did a interview with her. She was still defending Bhagwan. I still love to live on Bhagwan's teachings. She was still dedicated to Bhagwan after he is literally the reason why she's spending the next 4.5 years that she will never get back in her life in jail because of Bhagwan, and she's still so dedicated to him. Because of all of this, Bhagwan was then taken out of the election. Wasco County then had a mayor. Round of applause to Wasco County. After Bhagwan was sent back to India, people just started to go to India. Slowly, one by one, like people were still trying to get the community back in its pace without Sheila and Bhagwan, but it was just so tough. Eventually, Antelope had another election, and the mayor of Antelope, the previous mayor of Antelope, won, and so it was no longer called the Rajneesh, it was now called Antelope. They went back to their original street signs. It was never still the same for Antelope after that. A lot of the people left, and my camera died, so sorry if the angle looks a little weird. When they did go back to India, he was able to get his commune back in 1990. That is when, instead of being called Bhagwan, he wanted to be called Osho. When he did change his name, he also took a vow of silence once again. In 1990 is when he had passed away from natural causes. Osho, or Bhagwan's last words were, "I leave you my dream." As far as everyone now, Shanti actually kind of thriving. She actually opened up her own juice bar in Germany, and it was at this juice bar that she found her husband. Sheila served her 4.5 year prison sentence. She said that she, you know, wanted a career that reflected Bhagwan's teachings of, you know, loving and accepting everyone. She became a caretaker for older and younger patients, basically like in a mental hospital. Even in India today, it's still up and running today. You could literally go. That's the crazy story of Rajneeshpuram Cult. There's not really much to be said about it because it still exists. Like, you could literally still go there. Now, I'm gonna say my few cents on it. It had potential to be really good. Loving everyone despite your gender, pronouns, race, because at the end of the day, we're all humans to live in unison and live in a world of peace and not hate. And every time you do something out of peace and compassion, not because you want money for it. I feel like that idea was really, really nice, and it could have gone very far, but I feel like the logistics of it just didn't work out. Of course, you're going to run into a lot of problems when you basically just lie to people. The illegal stuff I don't agree with, because they didn't have to come to America. It's not the same as when, like, you know, a lot of immigrant stories, they come to America because they have to, you know, they really have no other choice. Come here because they want a better life for their children and they want a better life for themselves. That I do support. I feel like people should be able to come here with the intention of doing good. But these people, they literally came to America because Bhagwan was facing an arrest in India that he literally told no one about. So that sort of thing, like, I don't really agree with, because they, again, quite literally Christopher Columbus to this town of 40 people, loving and being dedicated to this single person, that they didn't even really see the extent to what was going on. But yeah, he committed marriage fraud and arson, but he's a great guy. Didn't want to face the facts and instead just dive straight into defending him because they know nothing else besides defending him. So that's basically my opinions about it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. So that's the story. Those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below. I tried to go for Rachel from like Friends sort of look. Should I do a fit check? I'll do a fit check. This is the fit. Top is thrifted, pants are thrifted, shoes are from Kohl's, ring, I actually don't know. This is so mysterious. Let me tell you this. This ring, I have no clue where it came from. 3 years ago, I was moving around my room and I moved around my desk. And you know, there's a lot of things in my desk. So in order to make it lighter, so it's easier to move across my room, I had to take everything out of my desk. I took everything out of my desk, laid it on my bed, moved my desk, putting everything back into my desk on my bed. This ring was on my bed. And I have no clue where it came from. I literally looked at it and I was like, I have never seen this ring in my life. Wasn't with my jewelry either, because at the time I wasn't really like a ring person. I maybe had one ring. It's gorgeous. It looks like something off of the Titanic. Looks good, but like, I don't know if these are real diamonds around it or not. Oh my God, what if I did a video talking about ghost stories? The video's over, by the way, so you could just like leave if you want, but I'm gonna talk a little bit with, you know, the people that just want to hang out. You know, this is the after party. So grab your drinks. We're about to tell some ghost stories. I personally believe we go to the afterlife if we have like a very expected death. If you die very unexpectedly, such as like you were murdered or you choked, your soul isn't prepared. It doesn't know that it's coming, so then it lingers here. For example, like Lizzie Borden. We talked about her last video. A lot of people believe that Lizzie Borden still lives in the house she supposedly committed the axe murders in. That I don't believe, because Lizzie Borden did not die in that house. She lived in a totally separate house and died a very peaceful death. She knew death was coming because she already had a pre-illness. Why would she be spending her afterlife in the place that makes her feel the worst? In those situations, I don't believe that, and I also don't believe that ghosts can connect physically, the spirit world, and then the physical world. I think that we can connect energetically, but as far as physically, being touched or like things being thrown around, moved around, people being thrown up, imagine, I'm like, I don't really think ghosts can do that. And then I just fly into the wall. That is an invitation. That is an invitation. I know my house is haunted, but they love me though. They're literally, I joke around with them all the time. They're used to it. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to follow me on any of my social medias, like my Instagram or TikTok, that will be linked down below, as well as my PO box if you want to send me anything. Should I suggest something for the week? I'm gonna suggest something for the week. Fear Street. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. I think I mentioned this like 2 videos in a row, that I'm very obsessed with 70s and 80s. Michael Myers, Scream, Freddy Krueger, very old slasher films. And Fear Street gives off that like 70s slasher film, but modernizes it. I forgot the director and screenwriter for the movie, but I'll put it on the screen because they literally did their spin. Like they did it. They ate it up and digested it. Like they left nothing for us. Sadie Sink is in part 2. Anything with the Stranger Things cast or the V team in it, I eat that up. I eat it up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm gonna let you go because I'm talking way too much. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and do something that makes you now me forgetting my outro. Do something that makes you happy today.